Welcome to CBS Sports HQ on this Monday. That's Jacqueline D'Agostino. I'm Tommy Trent. Now, JD, one of two dreams will be fulfilled tonight in South Florida. Either a Canadian team will win the Stanley Cup for the first time in 30-plus years, or your Panthers will win their first Stanley Cup ever.
Literally talking about this, I have like a ball of anxiety just like pent up.
Yeah,
and
how are the vibes right now?
The vibes in South Florida are very much so. That extra travel day, who knew that it would just be extra stress for all of the fans? But I brought my towel. I'm hoping for good vibes. I'm hoping to speak it into existence. Although I'm not super confident, Tommy. Yes, because it really has been like the tale of two different teams. The first three games and the last three games have just been so different. The Oilers, though, have outscored Florida 18-5 over the past three games. They are looking to win their first Stanley Cup since the 89-90 season. Edmonton historically tied for the second best Game 7 win percentage with the Sharks at 8-4. Meanwhile, the Cats, are they going to be the cardiac Cats? We don't really know. They lost in 5 games to Vegas in last year's final. It's all been about redemption, and they are looking to win their first ever title. Game 7, it is tonight in Sunrise. One team will be Stanley Cup champs. Is it going to be the Oilers or the Panthers for the very first time? Oh my gosh, Tommy, I feel like I'm going to faint just like reading over that graphic.
Just breathe. You okay?
Ooh, okay. We have Pete Blackburn, who is joining us from Amber and Bank in Sunrise. And Pete, what a series, man. We have talked about this so many times. It all comes to an end tonight. Connor McDavid and company looking to do something they haven't done, or anyone has done rather, since 1942. Come back and win a series after being down 3-0. And it would be one of the best comeback stories in all of sports, literally ever.
Yeah, that's literally the reason that I'm here. I said to myself before the playoffs started that I was not going to leave my house. I was not going to leave my couch during these playoffs. I don't like traveling to games all that much, but I wasn't going to miss the opportunity to be here, just given everything that's at stake. We're talking about maybe the biggest single playoff game in the history of the sport here tonight, based off of what's on the line and some of the legacies that we're talking about. So this could go one of two ways, but either way that it goes is going to be pretty incredible, because like you mentioned, you're talking about the Florida Panthers, one of the most I guess maligned or like punched down upon franchises in the National Hockey League. They've kind of found their place in the league. They found their respect, and this is an opportunity for them to seal that deal and win their first championship. But then on the other side, you have the Edmonton Oilers, who have gone through a period of darkness, have one of the best players to ever play the game, and his opportunity to seal a incredible story, coming back down from 3-0 and lifting the Stanley Cup, with Connor McDavid being the first to touch it. So that would be pretty incredible as well.
Yeah, I feel like you saying, hey, I'm just going to be on my couch. Nobody saw this coming. We kind of all wrote off Edmonton after Game 3. We thought it could potentially be a sweep. And now the script has flipped. In the Cats, it's either going to be like the most historic night in the absolute best way or the absolute worst way. Like, there's literally no in between when you're looking at this, Pete. And they just look like a completely different hockey team when you look at 1 through 3 through 4 through 6. How do you think they're going to come out and handle this pressure? Because there is pressure for them, whether they want to admit it or not, for Game 7.
Yeah, there has been pressure on them, honestly. I thought that the pressure was really on them, too, in Game 5, where they were at home and they had an opportunity to steal it before going back to Edmonton, which you knew was going to be a scene. And then I thought in Game 6 was the first time that you could really see the pressure and sort of the frustration being worn on the Panthers, from Paul Maurice behind the bench freaking out after the Barkov goal was pulled off the board. A lot of the players on the bench, when they showed them after Oilers goals, you could see the dejection in their face. So there's a lot of pressure, obviously, heading into Game 7. This could be, one of the more historic chokes, not only in the NHL, but in all of sports. And they know that. They've had to sit with that for a few days, and they've kind of watched this whole thing play out like a slow motion car crash. So I think the first 10 minutes and the first 15 minutes of this Game 7 are going to be extremely important. And if they can break through and have something positive for themselves to take in those first 10 minutes, it could go a long way.
Yeah, it feels like every time the Oilers score fast or first, it's just not good news for the Florida Panthers. The goaltending, that has been a big storyline, because we saw Skinner was pulled in the postseason prior to this series. Then we saw Bob get pulled in this series, and it's really been a tale of two Bobs. He was not at practice yesterday. Maurice saying that his absence was to get him back into his usual routine with that extra travel. He was on the ice this morning. Do you make anything of that? Do you read into it too much, or you just have to take Paul Maurice for his word?
I think you take Paul Maurice for his word, because there's nothing wrong with Sergei Bobrovsky. I think that you don't put all of the blame at his doorstep. Sure, he hasn't been as good as he was through the first 3 games, but he also hasn't been the big problem. I think the big problem is the way that the team is playing in front of him, sort of the Oilers being allowed to turn these games into track meets and get a million opportunities off the rush. Like, that's where the problem is. And so I think Bobrovsky's fine. You mentioned Stu Skinner. This is a really, really big opportunity for Stu Skinner, because it seems like forever ago at this point, but we headed into these playoffs wondering if Stu Skinner could be the guy for the Oilers. And so now I think he's answered a lot of those questions over the last couple of weeks and the last couple of rounds, and he's typically a guy that gets stronger as these series go along. It really does feel like the Oilers have found their long-term goaltender and a guy that they can trust right now. But man, that narrative could change if there's a bad Game 7 from Stu Skinner, who we know can be pretty volatile. You're talking about some of those questions being reopened and having him maybe be the guy people point the finger at, costing the Edmonton Oilers a Stanley Cup. So it's a huge game for both goaltenders here for very different reasons.
Yeah, and it feels like the storylines have changed back and forth throughout this series. At one point, we were talking about Bob being the potential Conn Smythe winner. And over the last few games, of course, Connor McDavid has been playing out of his mind, and he has emerged as the clear favorite. Pete, whether the Oilers win, whether they lose, how confident are you that McDavid is still going to take home the Conn Smythe?
99.9999% sure. I mean, unless somebody comes out on Florida's side and scores like 15 goals and pads their stats here in Game 7, I really don't see any way that Connor McDavid doesn't win Conn Smythe no matter what. You're talking about a historic playoff run in which he's broken records that we thought we would never see broken, passing the likes of Wayne Gretzky and guys of that ilk. So, like, this is unbelievable, and I think the longer that this series went on, the better chance you were going to see Connor McDavid emerge as the Conn Smythe favorite. He did go without a shot and without a point in Game 6, and it's the first time that the Oilers have ever won a game in the McDavid era with that happening. So I would say I would put a decent amount of money on Connor McDavid not being that quiet 2 games in a row, especially in a Game 7 here with so much on the line. I think he's probably due to have an impact game here in Game 7.
Yeah, I think prior to Game 4, the odds were plus 700, something around that, and quite the swing we have seen there. Based on your confidence in Connor McDavid getting the Conn Smythe, I think I know the answer to this question, but we have to ask you anyways. Who is going to win the Stanley Cup?
At this point, I can't go anybody other than the Oilers. They've established all the momentum heading into this Game 7. They've looked really good. You could make the argument that they've outplayed Florida in 5 or 6 of the games in this series, and that they could have 4 wins already. They have everything in their corner right now, and I think that it's going to be tough for Florida and the Panthers to escape the doubt that's been planted and watered and has already grown over the past few days. So I'm going to pick Edmonton. I have no idea. We also haven't seen an overtime game in this series yet. We're talking about an all-time series without an overtime game. Maybe we get it in Game 7. I'm hoping for a classic. I think it's the Oilers, but if Panthers fans want to take any solace in that, it's that I've picked the Panthers to win and close this series out each of the last 3 games. So maybe me switching sides here is good news for Florida. Who knows?
Yeah, we like that positive spin, and I'm saying we on behalf of all of Panthers fans. So you stick with the Oilers there. Hopefully you're like reverse jinxing it. Pete Blackburn getting us ready for Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final from Sunrise. Enjoy the game. I know it's not your couch, Pete, but it'll be a good one. That is tonight, 8 p.m. from Sunrise. Getting a look at some other big dates in the National Hockey League. June 28th and the 29th. The future of the league descends upon Las Vegas for the draft. Hey, Tommy, that's your team.
Sharks got the top pick.
Yeah, they got the top pick.
Got to find the next Connor McDavid.
Yes,
yeah, right.
And then, of course, July 1st, that's when free agency starts.